here.
Getting up and running.
Facebook's coming up to speed here.
Morning, Facebook, if you can hear us yet. Getting Instagram, YouTube's up and running.
Alrighty.
You up and running, you think?
Good. Let me double check some stuff here, but I think we are.
All right, we're just getting going. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Monday, December 7th. Show 32. Oh, we got 34 coming up soon.
Ah.
We got to do something special.
That's
34, right? All right. Maybe we need to give some stuff away. Start thinking about that, Sean. Talk to Nick about it. Well, welcome to the 034 Motorsport live chat. We are here to... well, first off, we're here in our service department at our Fremont location. You can see various vehicles being worked on, B5s. I think Nate's blocking most of them.
Sorry.
We got a RS3, B5, Mark 7 GTI, B7 A4. We got a good selection today.
Slew back there, yeah.
So this is a Q&A program. We're here to answer any questions you have about 034 Motorsport products, services, or history. Anything about Nate and I, if you'd like. Automotive questions of any kind in general. We specifically specialize in function and performance, not so much in other visual aspects of cars. So feel free to ask anything you'd like. We'll be happy to answer it. We like to be technical. We like to kind of cut out the BS. So if you don't agree with something that we say, let us know. If you have a question or a follow-up about something, let us know as well.
Yep, and if you are hearing some weird audio while we're talking, we've got like all kinds of remodeling noises going on around us, shop noises. So there's floor grinding going on, and terrible things around us.
Although the mic software has worked really well in the past.
Yeah, so we should be okay.
Cool, let's get started.
That's what it is if you hear it.
Yeah, if there's some weird sound anomalies, we apologize. So someone's asking, test pipe performance, is it superior to gutting the cats?
To gutting cats?
I mean, this isn't something we've done a lot of testing on.
No.
Because gutting a cat is not something we recommend or do, but generally speaking, from a flow theory standpoint, air likes to flow through a consistent diameter of the appropriate size. And so what happens is when air is flowing through a tube at a certain velocity, when it hits a large chamber, it slows down in that chamber. And then it has to speed back up as it exits. So you'll never see typically a system designed for optimal flow with a large chamber stuck in the middle for no reason.
There.
Now, the catalytic converter is designed as such that the total flow area going through the cat should approximate the flow area of the pipes.
Yeah, if it's a good non-restrictive cat.
And that's certainly what we do by taking into account the diameter. Gives us a certain flow area. The bigger the diameter, the more flow area. And in a catalytic converter, you have to balance that out with, keeping a certain amount of heat so that the catalytic effect can occur. And so we can't make it too big, we can't make it too small. There's an optimal size that flows the most and still catalyzes. But generally speaking, I would recommend in a racing type application that you deploy some kind of test pipe or a smooth fitting pipe. One thing I've seen people do that looks pretty good is you cut the shell off the cat and then you weld it over a test pipe so it looks like you have a cat. Again, that's for racing use only. So, but yes, a smooth, consistent section diameter is always recommended for the best flow. Is the super duper throttle body an ode to the Uberflow intercooler name? Well, sort of. We do like to have fun with the German heritage of a lot of what we do. We are not Germans, or very American, but some of that umlaut stuff is just kind of fun.
It's
to
a
joke
very
about.
a nod to a lot of other
Yeah.
aftermarket companies that feel the need to
Yeah.
use it.
Yeah, it's a nod or a caricature of many American companies that position themselves with German-sounding names
Yeah.
in an attempt to somehow make the customers think that the parts are more German. There's lots of good examples in our market, but keep in mind that the name is the Super Duper Charger throttle body. So we are poking fun at another company that we would say overplayed the name of their product in this case. So,
Yeah.
Anyways, we're just having fun with it. But the throttle body is, the engineering, the technical specifications, the tuning, the integration is,
Yeah.
we believe will be the best of any option on the market.
Yeah, we could have gone ultra conservative with the name, but we chose this one just to
Yeah. Hey,
have a little fun with
and
it.
people are asking about it, so that's a good thing. I mean, it's a throttle body. It's a little bit bigger than the factory one. It flows more. It's not very ultra. It's just a throttle body. So that's kind of where we're coming from, and it's a good one, but it's not a supercharger. It's not a power adder device like a turbocharger or something like that. Update on B9 2.0T tuning. We are generally working on the 2.0T program. I'll say that it is active in our current engineering efforts, although nobody's on the dyno right now tuning it. So we have some other tunes that we want to finish and come out with before then. But we will definitely be releasing a myriad of B9 tuning in 2021, starting in Q1. So lots to look forward to. I think 6 months ago when people would ask this question, it's like, yeah, we want to do it. We're going to get to it someday.
We've got a lot more.
We have no
resources
idea
to throw at
when.
it now.
We now have a engineering tuning schedule, and it's on it, and it will be getting worked on and released. Hopefully by the middle of next year will be our goal at the latest. So, with our increased engineering resources, we can actually work on these things and get them done and bring them to market. Is there a learning process for tunes after flashing my B8 S4? We've talked about this before. There's this kind of adaptation that the ECU does.
Not much, honestly. I mean, a lot of it's designed to be ready to go as is. I mean, when we're dyno tuning these, we're not giving them any time to adapt. It's the raw mapping and the calibration as it sits. So there's some fuel trims and some little stuff that comes into play, but the performance numbers typically aren't going to change after time.
To the customer, we never talk about this. When people contact us, when they have a concern with the tune, we never say, "Oh, you need to let the car adapt."
Yeah, that's not going to be an answer we give out. Is to just let it sit there and adapt.
So here's what this is. This same thing happens in the audio world. So if you buy a pair of speakers and you bring them home, and let's say you have 30 days to return them, and you don't really like the sound, what does the typical audio shop tell you? Oh, you have to break in the speakers. They have to break in. It could take 6 months to a year or whatever. They make some BS thing up that says that if you're not happy with it now, you will be in the future because this thing hasn't happened yet. So that will. But there's no such thing as breaking in speakers. Certainly not to the degree that a lot of companies say. They're just trying to buy time and give the customer some type of answer that will appease them for the time being. And typically, you sit there, you listen to the speakers, and after so many weeks or months, you're just used to it, and you deal with it, and you move on with your life.
Yeah, if the vendor can buy some time, kind of let you drop off their radar, then.
So what happens in our industry? You buy a tune, you flash your car, you drive it for a couple days, you contact the tuner. Hey, this isn't as smooth as it should be. Whatever, there's some issue. Oh, the ECU needs to adapt. It's adapting. And it's the same exact thing. So they're just trying to buy time. And instead of going and addressing the real issue in the tune or the calibration, they're putting the client off with a type of diversion or distraction to send the customer on a wild goose chase that the ECU still has to do something that hasn't done already. So, we will never give that as an excuse or reason. The ECU does do some adaptations, but it's certainly not to the degree that many tuning companies say. There was someone on our Facebook group, our 034 customer group, who said that a sort of well-known tuner in Southern California said this to them, and it's the exact red flag that I'm talking about here. So,
if there's an issue with our stuff, we'll typically be sending you like data logging tools, or having you check faults and some other stuff. There's waiting for it to adapt isn't one of our go-tos.
In no scenario is some noticeable problem with the tune going to magically correct itself because the ECU's learning.
Yeah, and to be clear, this is a very different thing we're talking about than running like throttle body adaptations or clutch pressure adaptions and transmissions. Those are functions that get run that are literally just for the ECU to learn the end stops or the hardware that's within the component.
And those are very specific actions.
Those are functions you have to run on the ECU.
We can send you instructions on how to do that.
Not just run the car for X amount of days and it'll get better.
Yeah, that's a whole different story. So anyways, Sean, maybe you should clip this, what we just set out, and you can maybe include it with the other one too. I think this is something we should get out there. I mean, it's a snake oil type response. How big will the new throttle body be and intake for the B8.5 S4?
84 millimeters is the actual blade that we have now, and then it's a transition down to the stock plenum. But yeah, the throttle body itself is an 84 millimeter unit.
And then the intake features a 4-inch air filter, which is a very high flowing filter, unshrouded, and basically it goes 4 inches from the air filter all the way to the throttle body. That's a very high flowing intake. I think the B8 is one of our highest flowing intakes. It will support pretty much any power level that anyone's making on a B8 out there right now.
Yep.
And it won't saw through your fuel lines. Any tune in the works for the B9 S4? Is the transmission weak in the B9 compared to the B8.5 DSG?
Yes and no. We have tune in the works. Absolutely. There's going to be a lot of progress on that in the very near future.
Yep. Actually, in the next week or two.
Yeah. And then the transmission is certainly not weak in the B9.
That's a tough transmission.
Yeah, that Zf8 has been put into a lot of platforms with essentially the same hardware across the board. From RS6s to...
That's in the RS7, RS6. It's in
the myriad of other trucks.
Very powerful BMWs, trucks, sports cars. I think we talked about it last week, but it's a very good transmission. This is not your dad's automatic transmission. This is a whole new generation, fast shifting. The transmission stays engaged, so you can get on and off power, and the torque converter is not disengaging all the time.
I mean, we haven't done a ton of huge power builds on them, but I don't know of any Achilles heels offhand that everybody's running into on that transmission. It's proven to be quite strong, and
it does have its limits. I have heard of one failure. I'm not sure what all the circumstances were,
and it's so hard to know without us pushing and breaking them ourselves. The software can play a huge role in how long something lives too on these things, because there's so many controls around it.
Yeah, and how the power is applied, and how over what period of time,
what pressures you're running where, and how you're applying clutch and line pressures. There's a lot going on in there.
But it's a great platform for being an automatic. It's kind of as good as we could hope. So, can you comment on what EGT upper limits should be before the concern of damaging the cats or other critical components, especially for us that track our cars on dual pulley setups with heat exchanger?
First off, I'm going to qualify that with how are you getting your EGTs. These cars have calculated EGTs, so it's not necessarily the most accurate thing, particularly on modified cars with varying octane fuels and whatnot. So that's something to take with a pretty big grain of salt.
And where are you measuring it?
And then if you're actually measuring it, where exactly are you measuring it? Yeah, is it right off the right at the runner outlet of the head? Is it
further down because it cools down dramatically
before or after the cat? So
even from we've done EGT measurements, from the outlet of the exhaust port, like at the header flange, down 6 inches near the collector, it could drop hundreds of degrees just in that short period of time.
So yeah, you really need to if you really want to know what your EGTs are, you've got to set up a probe or two.
Yeah.
And then
and then it needs to be referenced to something. So we don't make any EGT recommendations. The factory ECU does calculate through different parameters, and it solves equation for what the EGT should be.
Yeah.
And
the factory protection. Yeah, the factory protections of factory limits will start coming in, mid to high 900C.
Right.
And then
maybe just talk about that real quick.
So I mean the factory stuff tries to target or limit the EGT to right around mid 900C on those cars.
Yeah.
And it does that by then once it gets up to that point, it goes into basically what's called a EGT control method. And it'll start adding a little bit of fuel and richening things up a bit to try and maintain that.
Yeah.
Generally, you can enrich the fuel mixture. If you keep timing the same, you'll get a little cooler EGT out of it. So.
But then there's also some calic protection logic built in there too.
Well, that's what that is. Yeah. And then it'll start limiting the amount.
Because if it dumps too much fuel, then the cat will eventually be damaged.
Yeah, there's lower limits that it can go to, and then it'll start reducing the amount of like timing reductions you can do on gear shifts and some other stuff just to try and keep some extra heat out of there. And we do the same thing, honestly, with our overrun stuff. If EGTs are over, I want to say about the same, about 950 to 1000C, we shut down our overrun crackle, logic, and all that. Just in a similar vein, just to keep temperatures in a reasonable range.
Yeah. But the factory ECU will, engage in those type of protections, and we keep all that stuff intact.
Yep.
So I'm not, I can't say that for every tune on the market, but that's always important for us, is to keep all that stuff in place.
Yep.
From a generic tuning standpoint, I think generally a lot of people agree that around 1600 Fahrenheit at the exhaust port is kind of a safe limit, and above 2000 you're too hot, and you can start melting exhaust valves and pistons.
It's tough to give a very generic answer to that, because
these are rough guidelines or conventional wisdom on EGT tuning. But if you're running our tuning, you shouldn't really need to worry about it too much. If the car is continually going into this protection mode, then that's something to look into, and you could contact us, and we can help you with that by doing some logs. All right, someone is asking, any plans to develop coilovers for the B8.5 S4 platform? We do not currently have plans. If that's something people really want.
We've talked about this quite a bit.
We'd be happy to hear you out on why. Sean, I don't know if you want to link them to the coilover discussions we've had in the past, but our goal is to offer customers a static spring they drop in. It's optimized for street and track driving. Could even be used in a race car, and to let customers experience that optimal product, as opposed to a product that has all these adjustments that needs to be adjusted to some unknown optimal setting that would frankly require way more time and testing and expense than the average customer would want.
The effort to make coilovers worth it is pretty substantial to really get any kind of benefit out of it, other than just being able to arbitrarily set the height of your car. Which is in and of itself actually not as easy to do as most people think. You've got to do it properly. You've really got to corner weight it, so you're not overloading various corners of the car, and it just happens to settle in the right in a given height.
And you're trying to optimize the height, in some cases spring rates, and then compression and rebound. Sometimes there's high and low speed settings. It can get very complicated.
Yeah, and then on top of all that, you've really got to take into consideration your travel limits within the confines.
You can't just lower it as much as you can.
Of your wheel well. The S4s will impact the upper chassis with the control arms, depending on if you're too low or not.
Right.
Your shocks aren't set up properly. So
think about it this way: it's like when you come to 034 Motorsport, it's a fine dining experience. There's no salt on the table. But we give you just the right amount of salt that tastes the best. That's our goal. So if you want to play around with that stuff. There are options out there. It's a pretty crowded market already. There's already some really good stuff out there, like KW, Bilstein. I think H&R has stuff. But if you come to us and you say, hey, I want to lower my car, I want to have a better handling, driving experience, we're going to recommend our Dynamic Plus springs because that's what they're designed
and
to
it's
do.
also, there's a reason our springs aren't lower than they are.
We could make them as low
as we want. We could make it as low as other stuff that's out there. It's not that we're limited in any way. We're limited by the fact that we're trying to optimize the performance of the spring. In addition to looks, it's not all about looks. So you can go too low and make the car handle much worse than, if it was a half inch or 3/4 of an inch higher. And that comes down to control arm geometry and how that all kind of works as you get further and further through the travel.
Yeah. What would be the main differences between a specialized VAG tune like yours and other multi-brand software tunes we can find out there? We talk about this a lot. We are a VAG, tuning company. We don't have this massive catalog of tunes. Like for every make and model that's out there. So, when we do a B8 S4 tune, we've spent 5 years?
Yeah, it's a massive effort.
Like literally thousands and thousands of hours that we've spent crafting and optimizing this tune, adding features and functionality that nobody else has.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. A lot of people are like, "Oh, it doesn't matter. I can go get my car custom tuned by so and so. They know how to do custom mapping." So much of the time, we're outside of what you can ever do in a normal mapping situation on some of these cars, where there's no fix, no amount of mapping, no amount of custom, calibrator knowledge can fix some of the fundamental problems that are just limitations that are in some of these ECUs, which is a huge one on the B8 S4 platform. So that's one of the reasons our stuff has been, it drives better, it drives smoother, it shifts better than everything else out there. Is we had to dig into the actual software, the firmware itself, rewrite some of that to make it all work right.
I think there's some misconceptions out there. People kind of think an off the shelf tune is never going to be as good as a custom tune. And in some cases that might be possible, but we have people come to us all the time in our service department, for example, or like they're in the region and they come to us and they say, hey, I have your tune, can I come in and pay you guys to optimize it more? And every time that Nate answers, there's nothing more we can, it's not going to necessarily be any better. You might be able to eke out a couple more horsepower or something based on the really unique mods of that car, but our calibrations are so developed, so engineered, and so thorough that to Nate's point, you're never going to be able to go to a small tuner shop and in a few days they're never going to be able to accomplish what we've done over 5 years. Yeah. So and keep that in mind. That's what you're getting is the culmination of all this work.
Yeah, it's even down to the point of just being able to log the ECU and get the data you want. There's no good way to do that from a normal standpoint.
The tools,
just some basic tools to do some of the calibrations just don't exist anywhere else. Without companies like ours that are spending this effort and time and making them for our engineering team.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's no free lunch. There's no magic because it'll blur.
That camera is doing some weird autofocus stuff. Let me actually recenter.
So there's just no free lunch or magic when it comes to tuning. You have to put in the work. You have to put in the time. Certainly, there we go. Certainly, the better you are, the more experienced you are, the more resources you are, the faster you can do it. But no one's going to be able to, customize a tune just in a few days.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to say we're the only ones in the world that can figure this stuff out.
No, there's other people doing it too.
From generically speaking, the guys that are custom calibrators or whatnot usually work on a lot of different cars, and they're not. Yeah. They just simply don't have the time or resources to really dial in and sort out and find those limits. They can kind of smash around them and get the car to do 75% of what it needs to, and it's good enough for a lot of people, but there's usually a lot left on the table that may be untouched.
And this is a theme across all our products. Our springs, like we spend more time and put in more effort to designing or engineering a spring than the big companies that have a huge catalog of springs. And we even develop individual springs for each application, for the A4 or the S4. We don't just offer like a B8 spring across the whole range. So we do specialize and curate and focus, and we develop a lot of expertise on a very narrow range of products. And so that's the advantage when you come to us. You get the benefit of that focus. Could you please compare your B8 intake with a competitor? They mentioned CTS, big performance difference.
Yep.
What are you as far as tuning?
So I'm going to qualify this again. Just we're going to limit it to the B8 right now because that's
Yeah, they're asking about
that.
B8.
Yeah, I'm assuming that was a B8 question.
Yeah.
The filter and setup on the CTS is severely flawed in a lot of ways.
Yeah, we actually flowed one.
Yeah, we had
one here last
We have
week.
one on actually one of our. Yeah, we had one come through here.
Yeah, don't say that. It's too depressing.
It is. And we were reinstalling it on this car after some work was done to it, and I saw the filter, and there's some terrible things going on inside that filter.
It's
just
a
the
really
filter alone, never mind the
generic
rest of it.
Yeah.
And we happened to flow it, and it was 40% down from our filter at a pretty.
It's definitely you're definitely gonna lose power.
A lot of effort. It was pretty tragic the way that assembly is designed, and it's one of those things where it's got all the bells and whistles that the aftermarket sometimes thinks will help, and every one of the changes they have implemented on that filter makes it much worse.
So obviously the CTS B8 intake is a knockoff. It may be even a knockoff of a knockoff.
Yeah, I have no idea where the roots of these started.
I think it was Stratosphere, which I believe is a now defunct company. I know they went out of business at some point in the past. If they're still around, but they designed this intake right away. It's a cheap design.
Yeah, the hyperflow intake.
It's a pipe with a filter and just this stamped laser cut heat shield.
So it's Stratosphere, then Rock Euro.
Rock. Maybe it was Rock Euro.
It says Rock Euro is basically the same thing. So I don't know. Again, I don't know what chicken or egg here.
No. Stratosphere shut down, and I think the Stratosphere guy started Rock Euro.
Okay.
And you know what? I mean, at the time, it was pretty much the only intake on the market, and I think APR was selling the Carbonio stuff, which wasn't very good. And so really CTS got one of those and just knocked it off. So the CTS intake is a knockoff of the Rock Euro. So just start there. There was no engineering done on it. And it's a very old design. It's a cheaply made intake. And I really don't think very much thought or engineering was put into it. I think it was just someone got a product to market, and good for them. They've probably sold thousands of them, and then CTS has probably sold thousands by knocking them off. And I believe there's knockoffs on knockoffs of that.
Oh god, yeah, there's copies.
But you can buy really cheap air filters in China. Again, no thought or engineering is put into them. They're certainly not optimized in any way. It's not even clear how well they filter air. They typically don't flow well. We've seen them kind of break up and implode.
I was going to say that there's some gimmickry going on inside the filter itself, which can dislodge. It's just literally glued inside the filter.
And we're gonna post some more information about this. But a lot of these filters with the inverted dust, kind of the cap
dual cone filter,
the dual cone on the top, those filters typically flow worse, because the dual cone thing comes into the filter and blocks the main flow of the body. So it's kind of this gimmicky effort to add more airflow, but it's actually worse.
Yeah, and we actually went to because people were hyping this up, and we were getting requests about it on some of our platforms. We went to our filter manufacturer, had our exact same filter produced with an inverted cone in it as well, and had them flowed here on our bench, and we sent it out to get verified. And it did flow less than our normal.
Yeah, it's our filter, which is already
normal configuration,
extremely good, and we added that provision and it flowed less. So all we care about is what works. All we care about is what gets the job done at the specifications, and all we're concerned about is creating the ultimate outcome that, from an engineering perspective, we want to meet. So, our air filter, every part of it is well thought out and engineered. It's designed to optimize performance, fit, finish, designed to look great. That's what we've just spent several years doing with our intake. I wish we would have came out with it 5 years ago, but better late than never. But it is, we've had the benefit of seeing everything else come and go, and for $345, it's the best deal on the market. There's no, by far. So, yep. But again, we had the benefit to kind of let everyone else do their thing and then come out with ours. For the 3.0T, what is the reason for choosing higher horsepower and lower torque?
No choice made.
That's not a choice. So, engines make torque, and horsepower is a calculation based on torque and RPM. So when you see horsepower, that's torque expressed through crankshaft speed. It's sort of the difference between your fist, the amount of energy behind your fist going this fast, and the amount of energy going behind your fist going as hard as you can and push it. So the same amount of force, but the speed creates an extra
amount of energy
that does work. So horsepower and torque are related to each other because they're both an expression of torque, but horsepower adds crankshaft speed or RPM.
Yeah, it's a measure of work versus a measure of force.
So typically what you see is when an engine makes peak horsepower at a very low RPM, say 2,000 RPM, like a diesel motor, you're going to see a very low horsepower number because of the low crankshaft speed, but the torque number will be higher. And then go to the other extreme, like an F1 motor that makes 100 foot-pounds of torque and 900 horsepower. And the diesel truck will be the opposite with 100 horsepower and 900 foot-pounds of torque. So when we're doing the calibrations for the 3.0T, we're optimizing power across the power band. Where horsepower falls is a function of the peak torque that this engine makes with that supercharger and all the other volumetric efficiency considerations. So it's a function of the motor. The only way we could raise torque is to increase the overall power of the engine. But if we wanted to make horsepower lower than torque, then we'd have to somehow drop power off at higher RPMs.
Yeah, we would have to artificially reduce it.
It's not something you would.
He actually posted a follow-up. Thanks for answering. The reason I asked because I have a competitor tune and it has about 30 horsepower less than your tune, but much more torque, according to their graph anyway. And that's the big catch right there. I think is it really depends how their graph was derived. If it's a if it's for marketing purposes and this is a crank-based calculation, what a lot of companies will do is just apply a global percentage to the whole thing. Yeah. And that's going to much more dramatically affect the bottom end of the power band and can falsely bump the torque numbers. We do a kind of a sliding scale on crank or drivetrain loss for the crank calculation. So because as your RPMs increase, you're going to have more and more rotational loss.
That's right.
In your drive line. So we don't apply this flat percentage to the
drive line loss is not static across the board. People say it's a 15 or 20%, but
it's not that at idle.
It could
not
be
the same as idle. The more power you make, the more it's a really hard number to nail down. So
it is.
we have to quantify it as best we can compared to what the stock advertised numbers are and do some rationale checks there. But it's never going to be a flat number from 1,000 RPM up to 7,000. There's just no way you're going to have the same losses.
Yeah, that's right. So
there's
a lot of suspicious advertised numbers out there as well. So we spend a lot of time doing a very scientific
and our stuff
calculation of our advertised numbers. They're not just one peak glory pull that we got one day.
Right. Yeah. It's an averaged run. It's data straight from our dyno, and then just the only manipulation on it then is just the averaging of multiple runs together.
Yeah.
To kind of ensure we're not going for the glory pull here and there.
And we got a lot of questions coming in.
We do, yeah.
Someone has a follow-up and says, while you guys are on the topic of intakes, did you find the carbon fiber shield actually helps with hot air, or is it mostly aesthetic? Yes. Carbon fiber is not a good conductor. It does not conduct heat. So it does do a good job of shielding the air filter area from the heat of the header or manifold that's right there. You could, if you're concerned about it, you could add additional like reflective tape to the hot side of the shield. We find once the car's moving that the shield is more than enough.
It's plenty to keep
because there's a lot of airflow through the engine compartment.
The heat zone's separate.
Yeah, so you know the radiated heat is still hitting the shield, but yeah, I mean it does insulate though, and everything we do. Typically, you know, there's a reason for it. Carbon fiber also looks beautiful and it's sexy and people love it.
There's multiple reasons we use it.
If we can make this, we could build just as an effective shield out of fiberglass layup, but it would just look boring and black and not very interesting. So, and it's just it costs a little bit more to do it out of carbon fiber.
Yeah, once we've got the molds done, it's just a material change.
Plans on a B8 2.0T intake? Yes, we are working on that now. For you B8 2.0T peeps out there,
there's a lot of stuff coming.
We are developing a whole tuning program for the B8 2.0T. We want to deliver the type of results we have with the 3.0T to the 2.0T for the 2.0T market. And so we already have a full catalog of 2.0T products. We were missing the intake. So we'll be adding that.
Intake and tuning.
And then
we got a lot more tuning coming.
Tuning calibrations are coming as well. We just picked up a 2.0T A5, which we're very excited about. And we will be using that in-house as well as an employee car who has an all-road as well. Any new products for the B8 Sq5? Funny you should ask. So these are our new Dynamic Plus SQ5 springs.
Crush a laptop here.
And I think we ended up with about 2 to 2.5 inches of lowering.
These are quite a bit more than our normal lowering because of the Q5.
Yeah, the Q5 is much higher as being an SUV. So this is the front spring and a rear spring. You get 2 more when you buy it. They are live.
A full set of 4.
They are live on our website. We have spent about a year developing these. A lot of testing and tuning. A lot of refinements to get the ride just right. It's not dumped. The fenders are not flush with the tires.
They look really nice.
But this is the kind of car that you could still take drive around in the snow. You could still drive off road with it if reasonable off roading type stuff. And it's going to noticeably improve the performance, handling, and feel of the car. Combined with our rear sway bar, it actually is a really nice combination. And makes the car drive much better than it should.
You really forget you're in a in an SUV.
Yeah. So these are live on our website, and I believe the social media marketing team should be shopping these around if they haven't already. So that's our newest product. We are also coming out with a really cool strut tie bar. A billet aluminum strut tie bar.
We had a 3D print.
Yeah. Do you want to see if you can find it?
Let me see if I can grab that.
It was over in engineering.
Kelton had it.
Yeah. And so that will install and tie the strut towers together. It's a good product on these cars. They have a factory one, but it's made from pretty thin steel tubing. Certainly doesn't look very good, but what we've come up with is much better looking and much more rigid than the factory unit. Nate's grabbing a prototype that we have of it. So, and then we're continuing to work on the Zf8 automatic tune for that car. So here it is. This is one of our prototypes that we've printed. It's multiple pieces.
It's tough to see kind of what the part splits are.
But it bolts together on each side with these high-strength M8 fasteners. It's multiple pieces, so it can fit in a shipping box.
Ship it.
And I think it's 4 pieces, right?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 5.
Yeah.
We ended up with 5 pieces. We had a 4-piece design. We had a bunch of different designs for this, but this is the finalized one. So, and it'll be reasonably priced too, for a fully billet.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons.
Strut tie bar like this. Yeah. Yeah. So a good focus on ZF8 wheels. Oh, and then we have ZTF 21 by 10s that we're testing right now. They're on a B9 SQ5 right now, but they will fit the B8 as well. We'll be putting them on a B8 and driving that for a while. They're huge and light. They're going to be around 24 pounds or less. A very strong wheel.
Yeah.
If you're looking for, kind of the best, lightest, strongest wheel possible, this is pretty much it at a reasonable price. So not cheap, but reasonable. Can the Zf8 transmission be tuned like a DSG? Yes.
I mean, it can absolutely,
not just like a DSG, but it can be tuned.
You can't add clutches or remove clutches. But
I don't know if they're asking, can it be tuned to drive like a DSG?
It can be. It can be
much more so.
It can be recalibrated. It can be. Shift points can change, shift speeds, line pressures, clutch pressures. There's a lot that can be tuned in those. So yes, there's much that can be done. Will it drive exactly like a DSG? No, they're functionally and physically different. But there's a lot of room to play with them for sure.
Yeah. And we do have a beta ZF8 tune for most
for a lot of
3.0T applications. So feel free to ask about that.
Yep.
It's currently heavily discounted.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. We've now got resources. We're going to be working on that.
Yeah. We're just looking to gain feedback from any customer running it in different applications. It's about half the price it will be eventually, and eventually you'll get the final production tune. You won't have to pay any more. So now's a good time to jump in on that if you were thinking about it. I was asking about a funny story about Nate.
I saw that earlier. I was going to keep it work related, and the one that keeps popping back into my mind would be a certain Eurotuner GP article that came out that we didn't know we were going to be getting photos done with. That is supposed to be just we're there to do ADTQ.
We ran ADTQ on the
some dynos,
AMS dyno.
This is not the AMS. Yeah, not the AMS you're thinking of.
This was like 6 AMSs ago.
Yeah, there was one down in LA that had a Maha dyno. I don't remember why we were there on that dyno specifically.
No, remember we took ADTQ down there.
No, I know.
Run on the Maha.
Why on the Maha? I can't remember why. Anyway,
I think. Well, no, it wasn't. I don't think it was. I think we just went down there for that.
Yeah, no, that's all we were there for.
There may have been one other thing.
There was something else we were supposed to do, but something fell through, and it ended up being a photo shoot as well. Yeah. And I was not
photo ready.
Not photo ready. It was not groomed for a photo shoot. And
we'll have to post that.
I used to work a lot more hours and do a lot less worrying about myself back in the day. So let's just say I was rocking a bit of a mullet at the time. And
so the way the photo is positioned as Nate just looks like he has a huge mullet.
It wasn't as bad as the photo looked, but it was.
Yeah, well, there was a few things too, and then like some part of Christian was like in front of me, so it looked like I had a huge gut. I mean, it was not a very flattering.
It was a pretty rough.
But I don't know. Nate's a pretty buttoned up. And you're pretty careful. You don't really leave yourself up for lots of shenanigans.
I try and figure out what I'm getting into before I get into it. Usually.
Yeah. I mean, like if someone asks for like funny stories about Christian, I have like 1,000 right here.
I dropped a dyno door in his head.
There's just so many. But I have lots of good stories about Nate, but not necessarily funny ones. I'll have to think about that.
Maybe not at my expense, at least.
Well, I mean.
That's what I'm trying to think. That was one of the bigger ones I was caught out on. I got in trouble once at a Audi Club track day for blowing sound at Laguna in ADTQ when I wasn't even driving it.
Oh yeah,
so that's a bunch of little stuff like
that's that. That's a Christian story.
That's a Christian story, yeah. Because
most of the good stories about
he got to have the fun. I got
Christian.
Hell for it.
Do you plan on a C7 A6 intake? That's a good question. Well, for the A6 though, I don't know. We should look into that.
Yeah,
and Mark, write that down.
A lot of the stuff we've got will kind of cross over.
I don't think it would be very hard to adapt.
It wouldn't be too much other than shielding.
Yeah. No.
So we'll have to
probably
we'll look into
C5,
it some more now that we're kind of through all this B8 stuff.
What are the benefits of billet mounts versus the density line for 3.0T? Strength.
It's a strength.
The billet mounts are virtually indestructible. I imagine the failure mode for a 034 Motorsport billet mount on a B8 would be like the frame rail
Your
ripping out of the car.
subframe is disconnecting from your car. Yeah.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, we've never heard of a failure associated with that mount.
They've been in my S4 for
Nate's been running them
4
for
years.
Yeah,
5
at least 4 years.
Yeah. Never been swapped out. Never been.
Yeah.
I mean, they've held up great.
And they're actually not too bad.
They're really not.
They're not good, but they're not bad.
Well, from an NVH standpoint,
from an NVH, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
From a strength standpoint, again, nothing on the market. Yeah. I don't even know if there is anything else on the market, but you don't need anything else if you want a strong mount that isn't too bad.
I forget they're even in there a lot of the time. You get some buzzing at idle, but that's it. Once you're moving at all, you don't even.
Yeah, and there's a every motor has a resonance, and so as you kind of pass through that resonance, if you just whatever it is, let's say it's 3,200 RPM, you stopped at 3,200 RPM, you'd feel it, but it's literally like 100 RPM, and you're on the other side of it. But when the car's moving, you're right, you don't notice it. I think at idle and in reverse is typically when these.
I mean, I noticed more of a change when I changed tires as far as NVH while I'm driving.
But if you're looking for something to varying degrees of performance and NVH, then we have a complete range. So we have a street density S4 mount that will have essentially an stock factory NVH characteristic, which means nothing. And then we have our track density, which is going to be between, I'd say slightly below the Motorsport billet mounts. So feel free to hit us up if you have any questions. If you're trying to go really fast, you want a 10-second car, and you're really going to be beating on it a lot, we strongly recommend the billet mounts. Is there excessive tire wear with the MQB camber plates? I'm assuming they're talking about the fixed camber mounts.
That would be my guess.
I wouldn't say excessive, but tire wear is accelerated if you're just like driving on the freeway. With the extra camber, you're putting all that wear and load on the inside part of the tire.
Yeah. But to validate that or expand on that, most of the tire wear and dramatic edge wearing is actually a toe problem.
That's true.
It's much faster wear if you've got a toe adjustment that's either a little toed out, toed in, or whatever.
That's a good point.
Then a degree or two of camber.
So if you have a favorable toe setting for tire wear, which is pretty much straight,
pretty straight on, yeah,
or maybe with a slight on the toe,
the factory spec for toe.
Then we run these on all our MQB cars. We don't have an excessive tire wear problem here.
Not especially not side based.
Yeah.
If anything, it helps us get more life out of the tires, because when we are driving and actually using the car, your tire wear is much more even across the tire on track or aggressive driving.
Yeah. Now, where it dramatically improves tire wear is when you're on track,
right?
And that camber means that the outside tire will be sitting more flat on the road surface, much more so than factory, instead of being rolled over on the outside edge. So we recommend them for daily driver street cars. We run them on all our cars. We've sold many thousands of those mounts. There is not a widely reported tire wear issue. But if you're looking to get 50, 60,000 miles out of a set of tires, then
camber plates are probably not.
Camber's probably not what you want to add. It's this is something that you do to make the car handle better and much more fun to drive.
One of the compromises.
Yeah. And if you want to have great fuel mileage and very low tire wear, Prius is a good option, or maybe e-Golf or something, and just keep it stock. But if you want to have fun, blast around,
I chew through the front tires pretty quick on my e-Golf.
Then these are great mods to do. Can you guys make more parts for the BMW N54? We can, and we are. Yep. So stay tuned. We have pretty much a full-time BMW mechanical engineer on staff now, who's creating a whole line of BMW products with us. So look for much more BMW action in 2021. Well, I run into problems running the test pipe file on my catted car, only running this for crackles and not using ALC.
I mean, you're missing out on the catalyst heating and some other stuff that really should be there for the stock cats.
We don't recommend it.
We don't recommend it.
You can.
As far as detriment to the cats, I wouldn't worry about that too much specifically for the crackle overrun stuff. Again, it's still thermal controlled and monitored based on the calculated EGTs. So I think we'll leave it at that.
Okay. Let's see. Should any exhaust modifications be done to achieve more power past downpipes?
What car?
Generally, I would say that modern Audis come with very good performing exhausts.
Yeah.
And once you address kind of the downpipe, midpipe issue, if there is one.
Yeah, depending on the car. Like the 3-liter, we see very little power change.
It's minimal.
With a good, with healthy catalyst versus
MQB, there's more, but the exhaust on these cars are good, and that's why we really haven't jumped into the exhaust market too much, other than ResX's.
Yeah, the ResX for a little bit of sound tuning, but again, it's not necessarily a huge flow increase.
When I was young, like Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3 VWs, actually, I think the tide started shifting with the Mark 3. I remember I was working at New Dimensions, and we had a line of exhaust systems that we made. And, like on a Mark 1 Rabbit, our exhaust would gain you like 8 wheel horsepower, which was
like a 10%.
Like a 10% increase in power. Is huge. And the factory exhaust was like 1.5 inch. But when the Mark III came out, we struggled really hard to produce anything that made more power. And even back then, we would use the dyno to verify power. This was like the late 90s, and nobody even had a dyno back then, and we had one, and we would build different exhausts and run them, and we were losing power on everything initially, and we basically had to make the exhaust smaller, and bigger wasn't better in that case. Those were normally
NA motors get way more dicey with
but and then the B8, I'd say the B5 A4 S4 wasn't great.
Yeah, those certainly could benefit from
those benefited. But since then, certainly like,
well, I guess I'm also
B8 era.
You can count the B6 in there too. The B7s were okay.
GTI, MQB stuff, the AJ TTRS.
Yeah, Mark 6,
certainly the new TTRS.
Mark 6 GTI was decent.
The 8S and the 8V.5. They're really good exhausts from the factory. I mean, if you look at the Daza exhausts, they're really nice and big.
Yep.
So, I won't spend too much more time on that. I'd say even the B8 S4, the factory exhaust is quite good.
Our record times are run on a stock exhaust.
Can you guys go over why you decided on an 84 mil throttle body?
I mean,
it's bigger.
If you're
gonna go bigger, you might as well go bigger.
Yeah, we didn't see a lot of point in. I mean, it's the flange and the overall exterior dimensions of the throttle body really aren't much different than most of the others out there. So it's kind of free real estate to maximize what we could get out of the blade itself. That's it was an available throttle body. That's what we settled in on.
What are the differences and benefits for your B8.5 control arms? I'm not sure which ones they're referring to. It's getting all blurry again.
Oh man.
Generally our density arms are slightly better performing version of the factory arms at a much cheaper price. We offer our adjustable uppers, which there you go. I figure out why it's doing that. It's really annoying. A lot of times it's kind of like half focused.
It's actually pretty good.
Our adjustable uppers allow you to either dial in camber or dial out camber, depending on what you need. So that's what we offer for the B8s. Definitely check out check out our website. We talk about the benefits there. Shoot us an email if you have any questions. What's your opinion on future tunability opportunities for B9, S4, S5? Will there be a B9 launch control program rather than the brake boosting?
The ZF launch control stuff is we're working on it. I don't have a definitive answer to give you on how adjustable we're going to be able to make that yet until I get my head around it a little more.
Yeah.
But as far as the other tuning, and that's the launch control is a fairly small part of all this. The other tuning is wide open. There we can do damn near anything. So
The opportunity for us is amazing. We are full speed ahead on B9 tuning, and we're very excited about stage 1, stage 2. We're already looking at hybrid options. It'll be really fun and exciting to see in the next few years where the B9 platform goes. I would say if you own a B9, S4, S5, whatever, RS5, hang on to it, stay tuned. It's going to get very exciting.
Yep. And actually, on that note, someone's asking right now, they have a B8 Sq5, the launch control feature is different than the B8 S4, and that's exactly the same reason for the Zf8 transmission.
Yeah.
We don't have quite the same launch features yet because of the transmission and the way it, it's functionally different in the way that it delivers torque to from the motor.
Yeah.
So stay tuned, but currently, yes, the launch control features are a little different.
C7.5 CREC tune.
Tune at home. We are working on it. I don't have a ETA, and it's one of those things when it's done, I don't know.
We're working on it.
But yeah.
By the way, isn't it cool that nobody's asking about two-step updates?
Yeah, or crackle
ALC,
changes,
crackle
or
stuff.
yep.
So it looks like it.
I think we settled in pretty well there.
Yeah. So
I mean, well, to be fair, these are basically two-step updates asking for the ZF stuff.
well,
but
for a totally different application now, and so that's progress. Yeah, no 4.0T motor mount questions, although
there should be. Because
we talk about it every week.
Yeah.
We're working on it. We want to release them as fast
nobody
as
wants to get them out
anyone,
quicker than we do.
Yeah. Will you guys do an MQB Tiguan lowering spring? Sounds like Golf R springs may fit. Definitely something we've talked about. Mark,
Yep.
you should add that to the list.
Why not?
Typically, we wouldn't just offer our Golf R spring unless we find that it's optimal. We would do a different spring, but KO4 tuning on the B8, yes, that is coming. That's part of our B8 2.0T tuning program. We will also be doing a B8 Mark 7 KO4 option. I believe we already have
Mark 7 would be IS38. But
yeah, what did I say?
KO4.
Yeah, the Mark 7. I don't know. Mark 6, do we have a KO4 tuning?
Mark 6, we have some preliminary work. We don't have anything released. I mean, we've
shoot us an email tuning at 034motorsport.com for Mark 6.
That's released yet.
Yeah. What comparisons have you seen between static performance suspension and quality performance air suspension? Oh, man. Well, generally speaking, I would say that air ride suspensions are not well suited for performance, generally speaking. Now, I'm sure, the air bag presents a spring force to the suspension. They seem to do well in the C6 S6, C7, the 4.0T S6. Those cars have air suspension and they handle quite well. Most of the stuff I've seen in the aftermarket is not suited for performance, but
yeah, a lot of it comes down to the bag design and the spring design and what kind of a spring it actually ends up acting like.
I think if someone like us set out to design a high performance air suspension, we could do it.
Yep.
I don't see a lot of companies focusing on that. So
it's a really tricky one too, because it's really up to like, where do you want your ride height to live? Well, that's going to change what your spring rate is. So that's going to change how the whole vehicle.
Right, because as you raise the car, the air pressure,
your
spring is stiffer.
Yeah, your spring is stiffening. Well, I mean, ideally, what you'd have would be a cockpit adjustable coilover perch that would move up and down. That would allow you to maintain your spring rate.
It would be complicated.
Up and down. It's
to do an air ride, high performance air ride suspension, you'd have to lock in the ride height, which is the problem. So, or you would say, here's 10 height settings on this controller, and 5 is the best performance, and everything else is, worse.
Yeah.
So, if you want a good handling car, a high performance car, even you look at the cars that are out there, every good handling high performance car offered by any OEM does not have airbags. I think there are some high performance applications.
There may be some really exotic examples, but again, it's going to be at a fixed height for that performance.
I'd like to see F1 do airbag suspensions and see what they come up with, right? Because then that would kind of set the get sorted, right? Yeah. So generally, in the real world, I would say if you're concerned about performance, stay away from airbags. if all you care about is looks and raising and lowering your car, airbags that's the best option. You can't beat that. So I think we're out of time for this week. So thank you for all the great questions. Thanks for listening to us and joining us. And thank you guys for your support. We've had an incredible Black Friday sale this year. More than double. We sold more than double what we did last year. So we're really thrilled to be a part of your guys' tuning lives. Thanks again, and we'll see you guys next week. Cheers.